right, and you're on, but give me 1 second, and now they can see you. There you go.
Boom. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Problem Solver Politics live stream. This lovely, I don't want to mess this up. It's Tuesday, right, Cody?
Yeah, it's definitely a Tuesday.
Okay, cool. Just making sure.
It's not.
In under
It's not Tuesday.
Under quarantine and curfew, you know, the days start.
For record, it's Wednesday. I was messing with you. It's Wednesday.
Oh, crap. You're right. It is Wednesday. See, oh, man, you were messing with me. That's embarrassing. Anyway, is this the end of the curfews? They've at least gotten later. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure the government will stop deciding to control us. We're actually going to start out with a couple of really interesting super chats. First off, Deathcoglip says, yes, 2 days of live streaming in a row. We're actually trying to do this a lot more often. It might even become a nightly thing. We're really enjoying doing the nightly wrap up. So thank you to everybody who is joining the channel. Make sure if you can, you join. It's a great way to support us and keep this content coming. Also, Lucas Ranker Usai says Cardin needs to change that pic of him. Is the pic where I got fat face? Is the pic where I got like the double chin going up in there when I smile? If so, you're probably right. My favorite photographer, unfortunately, moved to Washington. You know who you are, all right? And we miss you. It's actually the Erdman family. And my favorite photographer just bounced, so I got to find a new photographer to take some good promo shots of us because Cody's also looking a lot more yoked and ripped than he was before. Anyway, Raven Morokov says, hello, and Silverfang says, should there have been an earlier police response to looting and rioting so it would have gotten so out of hand? I don't think necessarily this is a symptom, not a disease. Okay, and actually a symptom of a disease that long preceded any individual police action, although we are finding all kinds of new information out, which we're actually going to hopefully be talking about today. And then Nathan Butcher says, oh, dang it. The fast response should have been arresting the 4 officers. I agree. The police answer to the mayor is not all of them. Easyland YT reminds me that I'm a boomer. And Nathan Butcher says, protesting good, rioting bad, although it does seem like there is an actual reverse response to that. And Cody's got some really interesting thoughts about who's really running this show. And Emerald Miner says, there's a curfew in my hometown tonight from 8 to 5 because there were plans to loot the Walmart. The whole place is surrounded by law enforcement. Yes, as Jimmy Dore says, I have no doubt that the law enforcement will cover the elites and the corporations that want it.
The elites,
you know what I'm saying?
The very elite Walmart.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying I said the elites and the corporations that want it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I saw him running through a Gucci store, so I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah,
I saw Mercedes-Benzes. Actually, I cannot confirm if they were driven out of the dealership, but in Oakland, a Mercedes-Benz dealership fell. Also, I want to address one thing. Tyroshi believes that the Twitch stream just completely end. No, I haven't done one in a while though. But pick a day. Actually, no, I'm going out of town this weekend. Next week, they're going to start up again. Until the AC was installed, we couldn't spend very much time in here. And then I was just personally busy. And then Carmen was crazy busy.
Yeah, you actually
and we kind of were rescheduling. Basically, we finished rescheduling things. And I really do want to start streaming on Twitch more. Mostly because it gives me something to do when I'm bored. I'm just trying to find a good way to work it in. But now there should be more time. So, again, I want to address that.
Hey, I got this super chat, Cody. Nate Johnson says, I've been following you both since the beginning, and you've both gotten more jacked. Yes! Actually, I haven't gotten more jacked. Cody actively lifts weights, okay? I do not lift weights, but I have engaged in intermittent fasting, so I am losing weight. Then I got leukemia, and my weight went back up because I couldn't do my intermittent fasting as I was taking my chemotherapy. And then now I got into specialized chemotherapy in which I can do both. So I'm back to losing weight. So thank you, Nate Johnson, for noticing that. And I say Cody does look more jacked.
I don't.
Maybe when you get that zebra shirt unbuttoned down to the navel again, we can, see all those.
I got good news. I got good news for everyone. Never going to happen again because we have an AC now. So I'm not going to need to dress for 150-degree weather anymore.
Yeah.
No, so that's what I mean. I don't. You get very charitably. I don't know. I mostly go on walks. My preferred form of exercise is to go on a walk because we have very nice places to walk around here. There's that.
That's funny. Izzyland YT says Cody's ripped. Wow, it's no wonder why Cardin always lets him talk for hours. I live in fear.
Cardin's got like 100 pounds and 7 inches on me, so don't. No, that's not the case.
It's there is a tactical advantage. Actually, I'm not convinced that small fighters in a real street fight don't have a tactical advantage because right where you punch and where you elbow is where our special parts are.
You can bear hug somebody smaller than
and then you punch me in the groin
and snuff them on the ground. And that's generally what happens. The bigger person doesn't get knocked over by the small. Oh yeah, if they're doing like the Sherlock Holmes movie, like super, like I'm gonna bap them on the ears. I'm gonna kick. Generally speaking, huge dudes are able to throw their weight around in fights, and they do.
That's true.
Like,
I have
you'd be surprised what 300 pounds of man just flopping around does to people around him, but it tends to clear out space. I'll tell you that. How about this? They don't tend to have very small defense. Some defensive linemen, but yeah, like in the NFL when they actually are like you're basically just trying to wrestle with somebody and get around them. They found that being 6'5" and 350 pounds is just the best way of doing it. That's the smart way.
That's funny.
Don't get the ninja guy who's all small is going to use his tactics. If somebody is gigantic and immovable, they're gigantic and immovable. It's just the way it is.
That's funny you say that. I actually have noticed that the world is treating me different as soon as I hit my growth spurt. I used to be 5'10" with a size 13 feet. I looked like Ronald McDonald, and then I became 6'5", and all of a sudden, whoa, people started treating me differently. So,
I mean, that's
T-Dot says you're a sex symbol.
Oh,
just
God,
straight up says Cody is a sex symbol.
That's literally like top 9% of height in the world, isn't it? Being over 6'5". Like you're in an exclusive club in height.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Height, intelligence, and just debonair. That was pathetic. So anyway,
ever seen the fights? Ever seen Butterbean fight people smaller than him?
Who's Butterbean?
Who's Butterbean?
Gosh, now I got to look that up. There's always something.
You don't know You live in California. You know what Butterbean is?
Butterbean. What is that?
Well, it's a turkey, but I'm not talking about the turkey.
Oh, the American professional boxer.
I think he still holds the world record for fastest knockout. He could box, but he ended up becoming, when he was at his most famous, no offense, but something closer to a sideshow, and he would just knock people out in one punch. That's kind of what he was. Humongous. And you look at him, doesn't look very ripped. I wouldn't call him jacked, but I do not want to get hit by that man. And he will blow your head off. So
yeah, dude.
To your point. I don't know why we're talking about this, but to the point, like there's a reason why it only really makes sense for a huge guy and a small guy to fight in professional wrestling, because they can orchestrate things so they don't hurt each other.
Okay.
Otherwise, they'll just... I mean, you have to remember the amount of additional weight stored in somebody's limb because it's longer and has more muscles and fat and bone.
Well, speaking
Makes a difference.
Speaking of muscles and fat and bone, Christian brings up that Cody is exercising his Second Amendment rights. Cody, you got to tell people your routine. You work out every day.
Not every day. I guess mostly I go on walks. Sometimes I walk. I don't know. I thought it was very impressive or interesting. So moving on.
Okay. So,
I definitely enjoy doing like some light exercise because it's fun for me and I enjoy it. I agree.
Okay. So
like sometimes I'll just go and play basketball for like 20 minutes. What do you know? How crazy is that?
That's funny. I'll play basketball with you. We still haven't had that one-on-one game that we got to do. We were going to do that one-on-one game with a 6-foot pole between us for social distancing. If you remember that one before things got crazy with curfew.
I would destroy you in a basketball game with just jump shooting. I can tell you that much.
Oh, you think so? I don't know. I'm a shot blocker.
Tell you what, when I go out and play basketball, I'm not dunking. I block my shot from 6 feet away. I generally just go out and shoot the basketball, and I'm okay at it. I'll tell you what, if my defender was forced to stand 6 feet away from me, I could probably make some jump shots in a basketball game. I think I could. Give me 6 feet, I could probably make a few.
That's funny. So, anyway, Cody, let's go over what's going on, man. Can we just start from the Twitter feeds? And just
but like what's going on? Nothing. I mean, largely, it's I don't know. Were you around? Were you live yesterday? It's kind of the same things going on today. We're seeing a lot of the same stuff. We're seeing peaceful protests some places. We're seeing brazen daylight looting in other places. Probably going to see more lawlessness and chaos tonight. And I don't know. I honestly don't think any of it's really. I think it's most like vaguely attached stuff at this point.
So I do have a question for you that was brought up in one of the headlines as I was cruising through and I was investigating for the title of this. It was mentioning how like most major municipalities have now instituted some kind of, I don't want to say lockdown, but some kind of curfew, what would be known as a curfew. And we're getting the Amber Alert curfew things every single day here. Do they work?
For who? How?
Curfews work? Well, that's the question. What do you think?
For the state, yes. You tell the people to stay inside, and then anyone who doesn't stay inside, you can arrest them for being outside.
Okay, are they a threat to? No, I don't want to say a threat to democracy because we're not.
To the state to arrest you for being outside of your home, which when they're trying to control populaces, what do you know? Pretty nice. You can't be peacefully assembling after curfew because you're breaking the law and they could tear gas you. Legally, it's in the rules. I mean, like, I'm no lawyer, but you know what I mean. That's the thought process behind doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
You're all violating the law already. So now we can operate on a different level than if you're not. Now, unfortunately, curfews are fairly non-discriminatory, and everyone's affected by a curfew. Enforcement can be discriminatory, but the curfew isn't, right? Like, if there's a curfew to stay inside that applies to everyone, selective enforcement probably does happen. And even then, you read most of these curfews, and it's like, I saw it, they said they were closing down the street in New York City unless you're going to or from work, or you lived in the area, or you're an emergency person, or you're an essential worker. So it's like,
yeah, like you can basically choose whether or not.
So it's not like it's going to impede you, but it's going to make businesses close. And that's why they do it too. They want to close the businesses down. They want to keep the businesses closed. They want to keep people. Here's the thing. They don't like people fighting rioters in the street on camera. The government doesn't like that. They don't like business owners shooting rioters. They don't like it. They don't like seeing it. They don't like seeing 30 people run into a pawn shop, and they don't like seeing, was it the former police captain who got killed? Bottom line is, that's part of the other reason why they have curfews, is to curb would-be vigilantes, because they can then arrest them. Again, will they enforce it selectively? I don't know. Probably in some places, yes. In other places, probably less so, yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's like, as far as do they work, they always work. They do exactly what they're supposed to do. It just changes the rules for the police and their engagement with civilians. That's what curfews are for. That's all it's there for.
Okay.
They're not there. Curfews are there so you can pull over any single car on the street without reason, which they could do anyway. But still, why are you here? Curfews mean you could post up at the entrances to your town and stop every car coming in and say, why are you coming into our town? That's what curfews are for. They suck for most people. They basically suck for everyone, but they do help the police enforce. So, like, it works for them. Doesn't work for me. Not being able to leave my house. I don't like that, but... does it let the police do what they want to do? Yeah, so they're going to instill curfews. Mm-hmm. Our curfew started at 6. We had 2 curfews. It's 3 in a row at 6. The most recent one's at 10. I think there will be some kind of... I think the concept of there being curfews for unrest, I don't think will go away. I did think at first we might be seeing... It depends, though. If the next 2 nights show that they need to move the curfew back up to 6 p.m. out here, I've seen it be as late as 11 p.m., I believe, in D.C.
Yeah.
Which seems so late to the point of me where it's like...
Well, is it really a curfew when it's like bedtime?
Yeah, again, that's like... It really is the only people probably hanging out on a weekday at 11 p.m. outside are people there for demonstrators. Not there for any other reason. So again, it's all it's there for. Really. How much do you think foot traffic and road traffic after 11 p.m. in Washington, D.C. on a weekday is like a big issue? Like, whoa, we got to corral this stuff. No. It just means they know there'll only be one group outs. I don't know. That's the thing about things. Here's the thing, though. As we talk about this and the length of curfews, I guess you got to give some credit to Atlanta for being honest with their civilians. This is from the Atlanta Journal, I believe. What is this? Atlanta News Now, AJC. I don't know what AJC stands for. Please let me know. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution. There we go. Either way, I believe this is just a quote. So here we go. The Atlanta curfew extends for the next 5 days. It's a tweet from City of Atlanta. City of Atlanta continues curfew at 9 p.m. tonight and Thursday night, 8 p.m. to sunrise. And then they move on. Point being, they have outlined curfews in Atlanta, Georgia, at least through this Sunday.
Wow.
So yeah, like the idea of major cities outlining curfews for extended periods of times here. That's where we're going to be headed towards. Now, it's not the only thing worth talking about, but it is what's interesting to me because the curfews do mean a lot. They like I said, they affect the regular citizen populace, but 2, and the bigger thing so I was bringing up is it changes the rules for police when they encounter civilians.
Okay.
After curfew, it's a different rule set now. You're breaking curfew. They can basically say, papers, please. They can't necessarily do that otherwise. Yeah. And I don't know. That's one of the things that's really curious. Now, again, there's honestly, the longer this stuff goes on and the more I take a look at stuff, the more I'm just, I don't know. It literally doesn't make sense anymore. It legitimately feels like, it feels like the DEA agents selling cocaine to the FBI agents.
Yeah.
And then getting caught by the CIA agents. Because what the hell's going on, man? Like, who? Like, that's what it feels like.
Well, because you know what I was thinking is I will never ascribe to conspiracy what can be explained through incompetence, because I largely view most of these people as being wildly incompetent, not wildly competent. Okay. However, I got to say, man, in the distraction of all of these protests, how many scores are being settled? Like, you really got to ask yourself.
No, you don't.
How
Chicago
many?
at its bloodiest weekend in like
Yeah.
8 years. Like, I mean, like the numbers.
Yeah,
are
I
there.
mean-
I agree. Yes, it's happening. And
But
what do you know?
think-
In the
what would the
chaos, people are
intelligence-
taking advantage.
What would the intelligence community, like J. Edgar Hoover, we all know he hated Martin Luther King. And had there actually been a race war in the late 1960s, I'm not convinced that there weren't enough intelligence people with enough assets out there that they wouldn't have settled the score and said, whoa, those race riots in 1968 did a doozy, man. Those poor civil rights leaders we wanted to get rid of. You know, I'm not convinced. I mean, we found what? It was 2 or 3. You were just talking about this earlier, how it was Cuban nationals that had been used during the Bay of Pigs invasion were the ones that were basically caught breaking into the Watergate Hotel during the Nixon administration.
Caught.
Yeah, caught.
Whoops.
Yeah,
The CIA assets we used to try to overthrow Cuba accidentally got caught, and what do you know? It helped the intelligence agencies throw the president out of office. Yeah, that's one of the reasons.
So just
why.
think how
But here's
many
the-
how many informants that have ratted on like Al Qaeda or have ratted on where terrorists are, or how many just bloody hands people have known about that have lived off of a technicality are literally getting a visit during the protests because they know that the cops can't show up. If there ever were an argument for the Second Amendment right now, it's that when the protests and the riots start, cops cannot protect you because they are literally too busy, and you in a different life and death situation is not as important as the corporations that need defense and the mayors that want to look good.
Well, no, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, it's funny. I want to highlight a couple. Anyway, JFB actually still comes together. What do you know? JFB says, thoughts on stock market still surging even now. Well, yeah, the people that, there's no cabal that runs the world, right? But like influential, wealthy people, intelligence agency types people, everything is going to plan. Like I said, the market's going up. I want to get back. I think it was Riley, the NB Witch said that, they mentioned something, right? That,
Yeah.
and a bit of a conflation. I don't want to conflate the two, right? But they brought up the fact that, where was it? Or did someone else say it? The idea that,
Are you talking
There
about
you
Inferno 234?
no, the fact that quarantine is infringement of our rights, and now the cops are using curfew to throw tear gas into peaceful protesters. They're both infringements on our rights. Very good point.
Yeah.
But you'll notice something. They're both also happening. Why are they happening? Because here's the thing that I see
people are calling
Well, no,
for
but
it.
here's what's bothering me about what I'm seeing, what's going on is you'll notice, like I said, there's so many different disparate groups. Someone else mentioned that violence is the product of desperation. Why do we have so many? We have to ask ourselves why so many people are desperate. Maybe it's by design. You ever think of that? Maybe that's the design. People are desperate, and you have so many desperate groups. They're all lashing out in various different directions, so they can never get anything done. A bunch of people who hate the world and feel wronged by everyone destroying things will never get anything done. Even if they're just in what they're doing, even if really just might be the wrong word, right? But even if like they're angry because of actual things done wrong against them, they're just disparate groups breaking things. There's only one result of disparate groups breaking things with no chance of uniting behind anything. They will get cracked down on to cheers from the crowds. Thank you, Mr. Government. I'm not saying that, but that's the only logical end. I mean, we were joking about this before, but the lawlessness of the French Revolution led to Emperor Napoleon, right? Like,
Yeah.
these things lead somewhere. If you do not have any kind of order in what's going on, people say, like, yes, you look to the police throwing you in jail for going to church trying to get suntanned, and you say that's wrong, but then you look at a mob of people burning down your business and you say, well, goddamn, at least the government's just gonna violate my rights like this. At least they're not gonna violate my rights, beat me, and burn my building down. But the thing is, because you don't have, like, I always think it's hilarious. See random people, I saw Jamie Foxx telling people to go home, stop. I think it's like, dude, no offense, Jamie, they're not listening to you.
Yeah.
They're not like, oh, wait, so you mean when I go to a working class Hispanic community and rob their pharmacies and burn the cars, that's not good for Black Lives Matter's protesting? They don't care, dude.
Yeah.
They didn't care in the first place.
But
'Cause they're
something's
not out there
working.
for that.
Something's working. I mean, Bank of America just pledged to give him what, $1 billion?
Bank of America is giving $1 billion to Black Lives Matter because that's like I said, when you're out there at these Black Lives Matter protests, remember that George W. Bush, Citibank, and Bank of America are behind you.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
This is the most
It's
confusing
weirdest-
time out there. It's like,
it almost, like I said, it almost,
who's the hero?
it almost feels like it don't not planned, but it does not feel organic. It feels like a bunch of people are saying, let's jump at this opportunity to do something, because the only result is we're getting stricter crackdown. We're getting police dispersing protests everywhere now. That's the result of this. There's no other, like, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't logically see any other conclusion to having various different groups with various different gripes that are not uniting behind anything. They're not trying to push for anything in particular.
Yeah.
There's no leaders, there's no flags, there's no nothing. They're just kind of out there doing stuff in different directions for their own interests. But the government is what they're all working against, who isn't this disparate faction. It's moving very calculated. To get to someone else asked about, what is it? I've got conflicting reports. Has the Insurrection Act actually been signed?
Well,
or
yeah,
not,
that's
or is it being
what I was
discussed?
getting. There's a
But
question
still,
here.
That's how you get there. Why are we even discussing this? Because a bunch of groups of people that are not communicating on a level to advocate together. Like, if there's order over the state, people might turn to that order. But when there's chaos over the state, they'll probably turn to the state. And that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Every single night, more and more and more and more. So it's just, I don't know. It feels like that was the idea. It feels like someone is getting what they want out of this, and what they want is people to turn to the state and away from all this other stuff. And it's working. It's happening.
Yeah. I actually have to say that I agree a lot with you. Inferno 234 says, what was your guys' reactions to Trump's order to enact a law from 1807 to order the military to stop the protests? I'm low-key kind of scared because this is a low-key violation of our First Amendment. Okay, so first off, what you're talking about is the Insurrection Act. There's this part of the Constitution in the Bill of Rights called posse comitatus, which actually means that the military cannot engage in law enforcement. The reason why you don't get arrested for speeding by, for example, the Army is because the Army is a borders outward organization, and that's a very specific right of the United States of America. And unless it is a military action, like actual soldiers, regulars crossing the border to invade us militarily, the Army, or any of the armed forces really, have no right to be on U.S. soil. It's not their jurisdiction, unless it's the National Guard who gets mobilized and requested by a governor. The National Guard can't come in and just say, look, we're going to handle this because you're not doing it right. That's states' rights. And the president cannot use the military unless requested by one of the governors, and that's the Insurrection Act. Like, if you think about it, was the Civil War an act of law enforcement, or was it a war? It was a rebellion, which is an insurrection, which allows us to then use the military. So I got to say,
again, depends on who you ask, right?
Yeah,
I think the seceding Southerners said we're being attacked by the oppressive northern the United States. We're attacking a foreign country from their perspective. From the perspective of the U.S., like you said, it would be law enforcement, which is interesting.
Yeah. So I'll tell you right now, Inferno 234, I don't have a problem with using duly elected, sensible legislation. The Insurrection Act makes sense in the war games of what would happen if.
Also worth noting, it was invoked in 92 for the Rodney King riots to quell them eventually as well.
Yes, exactly. So it's one of those pieces of legislation that has not been abused yet. FISA, different story. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the initial quarantines I see as huge violations of the Constitution, but this is actually kind of the orderly separation of powers and the machine actually working correctly if the Insurrection Act is invoked. If it starts getting invoked all the time just for stupid little reasons, well, yeah, then we got a problem. But it doesn't seem like our government has found a way to abuse that one yet.
Well, also, to a point, I want to get something else, but a couple things.
And we got a super chat.
Yeah, we got a couple super chats. One thing somebody said that I thought the Insurrection Act, I believe they meant insurrections and autocorrected, was to stop a slaves rebellion. That's why I'm kind of concerned. I do believe something along those lines, but you'll notice, like, the government will design tools to be used because of specific things happening, but then they will use them for other things. I'm not defending the government's use of the military as police, but I'm just saying, like, an event happened that said maybe sometimes the military will need to enforce laws, so they wrote a bill for it. It doesn't. I don't know. I feel like what are these? A lot of these laws. What do they call the Constitution? The bill, is it a living document or some nonsense?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that?
A living, breathing document.
Whatever. I think that's the same thing. Interesting point you brought up, but I do think that's more on the lines. A couple things I want to get to. First of all, let's get to working backwards up here. Izzyland YouTube said, guys, I'm over in Chicago area. We had riots downtown and they closed down all the stores. That sucks, man. I couldn't even get my groceries. That's, again, bothers me about this stuff. But by the way, happy birthday, man. Happy birthday, dude.
And we got another super chat above that.
I don't. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Happy birthday. Thanks for watching, hanging out with, especially because I remember seeing you for a while, man. You've been coming to a lot of our chats, so cool. It's fun having you here, man. Always glad to have everyone in the chats. Anyway, speaking of, Sly Cactus, $5 super chat. Sup, Cody, are you excited about the NBA season coming back? If it does, and tell Carden and his 6'5" self to join the Lakers. Honestly, the Lakers are huge.
Dude, I'm the
Huge.
short guy on that court.
Well, I mean,
I've been on the court with them.
Well, 6'5". You know, the
I'm
problem
a
is,
shrimp.
The problem is at 6'5", you need to be playing like a
a point
wing.
guard.
Nah, you'd be a big point guard. Be a shooting guard. 6'5", honestly, you are kind of trapped in that shooting guard. Maybe like a tweener point guard. Be like you basically are forced into being.
No, I'm the tiny guy. Look, I was an honorary ball boy for the Clippers when my dad had season tickets.
Point guards, generally speaking, are between 6 foot, 6'2", generally speaking.
Oh, dude. Okay, maybe. Go down the rosters. They're all, dude, the shortest guy on that court every time we were courtside, I swear, this was back when I was 6 foot, maybe 3. I was a ball boy for the Clippers. And I remember I was used to being the taller one around because I'd already made the volleyball team, I believe it was by that point. I might be getting my years wrong here. But either way, I just remember that it was the first time in my life where I had to chest pass upwards because Kevin Garnett was there. And Stephon Marbury, I remember exactly how tall I was. I was Stephon Marbury's height.
Exactly, he's a guard, yeah. But
yeah, and Stephon Marbury is the shortest dude on the court, and I was his height, all right? And I remember these goons just walking out. When they're all together on the court and you're watching on TV, nobody looks truly tall because everybody's tall. Yeah. But when all of a sudden you are standing next to Kevin Garnett, I mean, and his frame was wild. His torso was from chest to like knees, and he was a knuckle dragger.
Like a 6'10"
I mean,
power forward. Okay, anyway,
yeah, he had like a 7'5"
I'm not gonna
arm
talk
span.
about the fact that indeed basketball players I think Sean Bradley was 7'6". Indeed, basketball players are tall.
Yeah.
And someone said that point guard's closer to 6'3". Interesting, but yeah, 6'5". You gotta be able to dribble, make some plays, and shoot from range. You're not gonna be able to play the kind of like big man game you can play at the YMCA at 6'5" in the NBA. I agree. Anyway.
So let me see. Riley the MB Wedge says, so if a governor is needed for the Insurrection Act, actually, no, I don't think a governor's needed. That's usually how it goes.
Hold on 1 second. I have a better question.
Yes.
How come we've jumped from, and it's been in about 8 days, it became, well, technically, how much military you'll notice how the government's already reframed every conversation around, well, exactly how much force can they legally use? And then it just keeps moving. Yeah. Meanwhile, no one else is getting anything. I did hear they upped the charges on, I believe it's Officer Chauvin, is how you pronounce his name?
Yeah.
And they've arrested the other 3 in abetting murder, I believe. Serious charge. Again, Keith Ellison, DA for Minnesota. He's no alt-right, bootlicker. Like, he's going to come after these guys. Trust me. He's famously posed with the Antifa handbook in his hand when he was posting. But, they're going after those officers, too. But it's just, no one's getting anything out of this but the state. The government gets to impose stricter curfews. The government gets to arrest more people. The government gets to bring out more heavily armed police. Government gets to start messing around talking about, well, exactly how much can the president just deploy military to quell stuff? We were talking about this 9-10 days ago. They got all that in a week. What did anyone else get? Seriously, what, stolen TVs? Awesome, great. I'm sure all the booze flooding the streets is going to be what helps people out right now. That's what they want. Meanwhile, government gets exactly what they want, dude. Anything they want. They're just passing bills, telling the people, hey, sorry, but you see the videos, you see what's going on. I mean, we live out here, people. There's supposed to be a protest here tomorrow, so everyone's boarding up their businesses and taking the stuff out of them. State got what it wanted. People are scared. And when they're scared, they're going to ask state for help. Again, it doesn't have to be that way. It's just, unfortunately, what they're scared of is a mob that cannot be appeased. Like if looters are following around protests looting, you can't really do anything about that. What are you going to just leave stuff outside so they don't break in? Like, what are you going to do? You can appease the state. They have rule. It reminds me of the, have you ever seen the movie The Other Guys?
The Other Guys. No, I haven't.
There's a scene in The Other Guys, it's a buddy cop film where they say, let's do they're going to do the good cop, bad cop, right?
Okay.
So Mark Wahlberg's one of the cops and he's grabbing the guy and he's shaking him and yelling at him. And so the guy looks over at Will Ferrell, the other cop, and says, well, you seem reasonable. I'll talk to you. And so Will Ferrell comes up and he's like, you think I seem reasonable? And starts grabbing him and slamming him up and down on the desk. And that's what it feels like sometimes. Or people are like, oh my God, man, these cops are just like killing people sometimes. They need to be held accountable. Obviously, it's not like they're driving around drive-bying people with live rounds, but like, we need to hold cops accountable more. And then it's like, I guess I'll turn to you. And then they burn your building down and beat the shopkeeper together.
But the question is, are they doing it?
Dang, I guess I can't turn to you. Like, what do I do?
Well, the best part is now they're doing it in Joker masks. Have you seen the dude that burned the police car in Chicago in an actual Joker mask?
Yeah, Spider-Man was there. Yeah,
this is like beyond
here's the
LARPing.
thing. Exactly. It's a game to a lot of the
Yeah.
people in the street. It's not a game to the government that's passing bills and getting stuff just being kind of more generally accepted that will span for 20 years. It's not a game to them. It's fun. Going out there breaking stuff. It's a game when you light the car on fire. It's a game when we saw this people robbed an art gallery in Melrose today. It is a game. I don't care what you're telling me. This is because it's fun. And they have nothing better to do. And everything else is closed, and the government's told you, literally, if you leave your house to do anything but protest, we're going to be upset with you. So that's what it is. I'm not going to blame any of these people. But guess what? They don't... It feels big time. Like, was it DJ Khaled?
Uh-huh.
But you played yourself? That's what it feels like. They're getting people to play themselves. Just all up and down. Like, here's the video I was trying to find. So,
Yeah, okay.
this is, I don't recognize exactly, I don't know who tweeted this. I don't care who tweeted this, but I recognize a little bit this art gallery. It's on a Melrose. I forgot the name of the artist exactly. But dude, do you really think people are stealing this because they legitimately think they're going to be able to sell stolen rare artwork for money? No! It's because it's fun, dude.
I was about to say, yeah, dude, this seems like it'd be a lot of fun, man.
People are smiling. How many people realistically think I'm going to turn this obviously stolen piece of art, it was stolen on camera, for any kind of real money? But guess what? When the National Guard is rolling through your streets because the government's rejigged the rules to make it easier, that sticks. And that isn't fun, and they aren't LARPing. They're actually doing this stuff. And that's what's frustrating me. I get it, dude. Woo! Looks like a whole lot of fun. Wish I was out there doing this stuff. Unfortunately, I don't want to help the CIA track me everywhere I go. And I think that's what's happening. Like seriously, what do you think you could have told these people to make them not do this? Nothing. They came here to do this because it's fun.
Well, it's
fun. Because they're mad, because they're bored, because there's nothing else going on.
They're bored. One of the greatest insights I ever saw into revolutions and into world history was a history professor at Yale was giving this interesting discourse when I was in college, and he said one of the greatest facts that rulers need to understand and come to grips with as a society is that war is fun, and we don't understand how much boredom has had to do with every revolution.
Well, it's like I want to, I guess, but to the point, just to get, I think at this chance at talking about a small percentage of people. I know I am, but guess what? There's a small percentage of people that are in power, that are in the government, that are restricting our rights every single day more and more and more. Like I said, man, you think you can, what is it? Omar from The Wire said this. Come at the king, you best not miss. You missed trying to come at the federal government. You missed bad. They don't care about any of this stuff going on. You notice they talk over the protests because they don't matter to them. They're only talking about the small percentage of people, which I agree. It's not a lot of them. It doesn't have to be a lot. It just has to be enough on camera to justify what they're doing. And guess what? It's justifying just enough to keep pushing. Dude, no one asked anyone if we should have curfews. They just imposed them. And it's going to keep happening that way. And like I said, just a small percentage. It only takes a small percentage. You only got to egg on a very small percentage of people to scare others into turning to the state. That's someone thinking said, don't be a bootlicker. No one wants to be a bootlicker. They also don't want to be. They also don't want their shop robbed. So it's just people are backed into corners. And the thing is, the people out there protesting, the people out there burning stuff, they're all different groups. Everyone feels backed into a corner. The only difference is the state's actually effective when they're backed into a corner. You back the state into a corner, National Guard's on your street corner.
Yeah.
They back you into a corner, you rob a Best Buy or stand around on the street till you get tear gas. You get nothing, they get what they want. And that's how it keeps working. So they keep people out there keep messing around, see what happens. And it's not gonna get better. The government's not gonna say, I guess we should stop just getting everything we want passed and start listening to people. For what, dude? For what? And like I said, I agree. No one can stop any of this. These people don't care what Black Lives Matter wants. Yeah. They're gonna listen to them and stop. They're gonna keep following them around and doing this stuff. They don't care. People that are out there robbing because they're broke because the coronavirus economy don't care. People out there robbing because they've been mad at the government for 5 years don't care. People burning down government buildings because they hate the government don't care about what's good for Black Lives Matter. That's not why they're out there. However, like I said, there isn't 5 disparate groups working within the government. There's the government, and they're getting what they want. They're talking Insurrection Act. They're talking, isn't it crazy Andrew Cuomo is openly flouting? Well, I guess I might have to just overthrow Bill de Blasio as mayor. Never happened before, but hey, someone's got to put the National Guard in those streets. What? The governor of a state just kind of openly in a press conference like, you know what? I'm not saying I'm going to do it or I want to, but I might have to. Yeah, I might have to take Bill and just push him aside. That's what they're getting. We're getting a governor who might actually just take over control of a city right now because he feels like it. I get it. He hasn't said he will. Maybe he's backed him down in the last 10 hours. I haven't checked. But he's getting that. What is anyone else getting? Are you getting trapped on the Brooklyn Bridge and tear gassed? Probably. Yeah. Probably what's happened to you. Meanwhile, Cuomo was asking his friends, I can do that, right? I actually can't just take over, can I? That's what he's doing, and he might get it. But you're never going to get what you want out there in the streets, unfortunately. I hate to say it. Like I said, America, you don't get the nickname the Great Satan for nothing, man. They don't just throw that around. Yeah. You think like it's kind of like
I don't know. They kind of do.
I don't think I truly believe America is the Great Satan. But keep that in mind. You're coming at the Great Satan. Come at the Great Satan playing by its rules. See what happens. You'll lose, man. They've designed the rules for you to lose. That's why they're there. Not there for them to win. Like, why do they think a casino has rules? So they lose less money and take more of yours. Not so you can win more money from them. Okay. Same thing here. I mean, I hate to say it because it's a bit cynical, but I do feel like, for the most part, the house does always win, because you're in the house. You know, they run the things. So again, I think it's the problem with what's going on. I see too many disparate groups. I see, dude, if there was like a leader at the top of all this and it was clear people were listening to them, I think people overestimate or underestimate what that would mean.
Yeah.
If somebody said, we need to stop looting and rioting in the city, and people listened the next day, the influence that person would have for others would be immense. They would listen to them. People would say, wait a minute, he told people to stop, and they did. They would actually turn their loyalty, perhaps, in the state to them. That person doesn't exist because no one's in charge here. So what do you know? The government is just going to keep encroaching on our rights like they have been forever, and people are going to get, I don't know, maybe if you're lucky, they'll let you get away with whatever you robbed, or maybe if you're lucky, they let you protest without being hit by rubber bullets. But for the most part, you're probably just getting beat in the streets, wasting your time, getting nothing done. Unfortunately, I hate to say it. I don't think it's how it should be, but I'm just looking at what is happening. Who's winning here? Well, it seems like the government's winning.
Yeah.
Like I haven't seen them they're not getting foiled at any stop. If Donald Trump wants all of you gone to take a picture in front of a church, that's what happens. Seriously. Go and whine, complain in the media. Say it's a big deal. Doesn't matter, dude. Next time he wants to take his next photo op, he's going to tear gas people because that's what happens.
Yeah.
Like it's I don't know. It's crazy to me to think that this completely organic, just spur of the moment, we're going to take to the streets and make change would work. It's almost like the scene in Batman where it's like, let me get this straight. You're trying to tell me that you think your billionaire CEO boss is also secretly a supervillain that dresses up at night, or superhero that dresses up at night and beats people with his bare hands, and your plans to blackmail him? It's like, so let me get this straight. America is the most oppressive, corrupt police state in modern history, and your plans to protest against it?
Yeah.
Knock yourself out, man. Tell you what they're going to do is they're going to turn cameras on the people that aren't protesting and are lighting cars on fire and say, well, looks like the police state. What are we going to do?
Yeah. Well, it's actually already started, except for fortunately right now they're catching the bad guys, but you don't know when it stops being bad guys they're catching and then the oppression of good citizens that they begin regulating and so on and so forth. We got a couple of interesting comments here. Sly Cactus brings up the Emerald Miner should get his girlfriend an emerald wedding ring because emeralds apparently are actually more rare than diamonds.
Can you get a Chaos Emerald?
Ooh, that sounds cool. That's a Sonic the Hedgehog reference, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. I thought that was going to go way over your head when I said Chaos Emerald.
No, come on, Doc. I grew up with the Sega. What was that small response that Sega had to the Game Boy? The Sega, not Genesis.
You're talking about the Game Gear.
Game Gear, yes.
Well,
I had a Sega Game Gear.
They also had the Sega Nomad, which was literally a Genesis that was roughly the size of a Game Gear.
All right,
the built-in screen and everything.
So, Izzyland YT says, y'all should interview Minnesota lawyer Nick Recchietta. He has a lot of details and theory on George Floyd and the riots. Hey, we'll interview anybody. Send us his information. I'm down for that. Also, Izzyland YT, tell us what you think is interesting, and we can discuss it on this live stream right now. Also, Inforno 234. Inforno, you got to join the channel. You got some good content, man, or good comments here, and it helps me see them a little bit better. Do you guys think that these protests have showed that most of our politicians are panderers and try to gain brownie points with the people and gut us by not immediately calling an emergency session? Yes!
Did you see the video of the politician who was caught on a microphone literally saying, I would not be at this press conference if I wasn't being primaried?
Ooh,
That's
do you have that video? You got to pull that
I can
up.
pull up some guy in New York. He's like, I wasn't being primaried. Even beer wasn't being primaried right now.
Oh, you got to look that up while we're talking about this. I got a couple of other comments we're going to go over, but you got to pull that up. That is just rich. Anyway, Scott Tregarthen says, yeah, I'm too confident in the U.S. government for the next few years. I think he meant to say I'm not too confident. I'm just going to dip out to Japan. Wow, Scott. All right. Dipping out to Japan. We'll miss you, bro. Don't know if it's much better there. They do some really crazy stuff in Japan too, though. You know what I'm saying? And I am still convinced that here there's no other country that respects civil rights more by and large, despite massive violations on behalf of our government right now as of late. This FISA thing has really made me lose faith in a lot of these people. But anyway, got another comment here. JFB confesses that Chaos Emerald went over my head. Only remembered it was Sonic when he said LOL. Dude, Sonic's making a comeback. And do you know what I just did, Cody, with my son? I painted a Sonic painting for his room with him. It had Ninja Turtles. And this is how proud I am of the 80s. All right? I'm a child of the 90s, I should say, even though I was born in the 80s. We painted Ninja Turtles. All right? Sonic the Hedgehog. The Ghostbusters on him. And we are going to add Slender Man. Slender Man is the only one that didn't exist when I was a kid. So I am 3 out of 4 still relevant to the latest generation when it comes to celebrating boy pop culture together. Total bro moment right there.
It's so funny to me that like Slender Man has become a thing that like kids like.
Oh, dude, my son loves all the crazy. But
like it's
Killer Joe. It is Killer Mike. No, Killer Mike's the
it's a rapper. Right?
The rapper.
Yeah.
No,
Run the Jewels. I think if he is, I saw him live. I have no idea, but
yeah, no, all of the scary ones. Whether it's Chucky, my son wants to watch Chucky. He'll literally say, "Dad, you want to watch Chucky? Dad, you want to watch Friday the 13th?
Okay, that's different.
Freddy Krueger, Jason,
which Child's Play.
You know, all of them. He loves all of that, except for he cannot stand zombies. He can't watch The Walking Dead with me and Brittany the Shadow.
I know. I think that is because he's a little kid. I was similar to a little kid. You want to know why?
Why?
Because when you're a little kid, for when I was a little kid, I'm going to say when I was a little kid, the thought of, when I was a little kid, I remember I saw Child's Play when I was very young, and if the door was cracked in a certain way and I couldn't see all the way to the floor, but what if he comes in and gets me? I was scared of that. But the notion of some little monster killing people somewhere, life and death isn't that big of a concept to kids for me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But with zombies, remember, the zombie itself.
Oh, it's the chewing.
No, it's not that.
Oh, what is it?
It's the collapse of humanity. Like
okay.
When Michael Myers is killing someone in a suburban house somewhere,
okay,
it isn't, that big city you went to that one time? You're like, whoa, a big city. It's abandoned and there's no hope. When you're a young person, there being no future is distressing. It's kind of probably why you see young people who feel like there's no future burning down cities because they're distressed. But that's my point, is that it's a different thing. When
okay, that
kid,
was actually insightful.
Like,
I like that.
Yeah, I never felt like, what's his name? Jason Voorhees was going to murder humanity and make it so there's no point in growing up. But yeah. I thought zombies, like if zombies took over, like, yeah, it's very distressing for children. The idea that, dude, I vividly remember. It's one of the things I feel bad for kids when they, when people approach talking about the climate incorrectly with them. Dude, when I was a kid and I saw, fun fact, in 35 million years, the sun will explode and destroy Earth. It like distressed me. I was like, wait a minute, the Earth's not always going to be here?
Whoa.
So when you're a kid, you learn things as kids. And I remember hearing that, and I feel bad. I feel bad for kids who go to school and have people tell them the world's ending in 10 years. If you're a 9-year-old and the world ends in 10 years, why should you care about anything?
Yeah.
You won't even be able to drink legally when the world ends. Why do you care?
Yeah.
I think that's unfortunate. I think
if you're trying to convince me that the leftists who are out there brainwashing children into a life of fear in order to get what they want politically is absolutely reprehensible, I am on board, Cody.
I think it's just adults talking to children, not realizing what they're saying to them. It's tough. To them, they talk about this stuff every day, all day on social media with people. It's just life. But to a 9-year-old, telling them they have no future is distressing.
Yeah.
Hey, I know you're 14 or whatever, but give up. There's no hope. It's like, oh, Well, I understand you're 35 and feel that way, but I'm 14 and don't. So it kind of sucks you're telling me that.
So we got an interesting comment here from Riley the NB Witch. It says, Daniel, the solution is Trump could pass an executive order pulling federal funding from precincts that keep police that use these unlawful forces on the roster. Now, I got to tell you, I've heard a lot of that coming from the left in America recently.
I don't think that would stop it. Like I said, I think the
well,
failure...
can I finish my thought?
Sorry, but yeah.
Okay, I was about going to say that first off, Trump doesn't have that power. It's the United States of America. And as we said earlier, the Posse Comitatus Act, the Posse Comitatus Clause makes it so that the federal, military cannot engage in law enforcement. That's why you have state troopers. That's why you have city police. That's why you have county sheriffs. That's why you have state highway patrol, so on and so forth. All of those funds, all of that money, all of those resources are actually allocated by the state. So Donald Trump doesn't really have that much influence. There are some areas that do receive federal funding as well. For example, New York City, being a very large thoroughfare, receives additional federal funding for its police department because they have to aid in the fight against terrorism. The New York City Police Department has a very unique role in fighting terrorism because they would indeed become the first responders should there be some kind of issue in one of the largest cities in North America. The Poughkeepsie Bay Police Department doesn't get that federal funding because nobody's really worried that they are a credibly threatened municipality. So very little that Donald Trump could actually do in that situation, Riley the MB Witch. But I definitely think there needs to be more pressure put on these departments. Cody brought up something really, really interesting the other day. He says a lot that he's a perspectivist. And I don't want to put words in your mouth. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm a radical perspectivist.
Yeah, you're a radical perspectivist. All right. And I liked how you said that to the right teachers unions, preserving in their rubber rooms and protecting the teachers who go too far with children or who are incompetent or who have X, Y, or Z grievous sin on their books is just as frustrating to people in minority communities who feel like police brutality goes protected by the police unions that don't get rid of the bad cops. And that's actually something that Chris Swanson brought up. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cody. The officer who grabbed the microphone and was giving some really good orations 2 days ago was Chris Swanson. And he was the one that said, I want you all to have a voice. We will walk with you. And he's the Minnesota cop that was being heralded as a hero in a couple of certain situations.
I remember about
that. No, really good stuff. He look up Chris Swanson.
I don't know. You know what's funny? I avoid the mainstream media coverage, and I get the here's a feel-good story right now that'll make you feel better about everything going wrong in the world.
Yeah.
Dude, I got no offense to that officer. I'm sure he's meaning well. No offense to people he's talking to. I'm sure they mean well.
No, well, I got to tell you,
that's neat, man. I don't know if
the way he handled the situation, I think, was should be the type. The type's an old school word that doesn't really describe it very well, but it should be the standard for most impromptu responses that police officers have to these kind of protests. He did a great job. Marched with him, said, hey, that guy's not me. It's not us. Make your voices heard. We'll walk with you and protect you and make sure that your voices are heard. And we're also going to protect the people around you. Like, let's do this thing. And it was awesome. And he said something interesting. He said, the reason I was able to pull that off is because he said, my community knows that we got gravitas here. And our department has fired more cops than any other department in a 40-mile radius. And he talked about how there was an officer that engaged in a certain type of assault that I don't even know you can talk about on YouTube.
At a certain point, though, isn't it like, I always discipline all my kids when they step out of line. It's like, that an issue you got? That a problem you got there? Kid, you got a problem with having to fire cops all the time?
No, it just means that he's well run, and I think that you do have to go through firing of cops.
I get it. I'm
just like you have to fire teachers, you got to fire cops.
If you're bragging about firing more than anyone else, you probably have hiring issues.
I don't think he was bragging. He was just being asked, what do you do that makes it so that you're not having these same problems other police departments are, and you have better respect from your community? And he said one of the things he was doing was firing cops
to your point,
that were bad.
Okay. There's clearly something wrong with how departments in general fire people, because apparently the only way to maintain a good department is to fire damn near all of them. So there's hiring issues. And by the way, here's the thing. Try to become a police officer. It's not really easy, strictly speaking. A lot of the times for civil servant jobs like that, you kind of have to wait in the list for a while.
Yeah.
You really there really isn't a.
It depends on the year. I don't think less and less people every year are applying to be police officers.
Things, the county, but still, like they'll have hiring sprees, and then they won't have a hiring spree depending on where. Currently, there's a lot of hiring. I agree, but the other thing is this too. As far as I know, I don't know that police departments poach talent from like colleges or universities and schools at all. I don't know if they actively go out into communities to recruit the good people to police the communities, because it's not they know they can't offer anything competitive. If kicking heads and writing speeding tickets isn't up your alley, you're probably not going to sign up. And they know that. There's a few like legit just diehards that just want to serve the community. But there's issues. I agree. It's one of the reasons why I think it's hilarious, man. Like trying to reform the state based on how it's policing you is like, dude, they got the police can only, like, if there's not a law enforcement arm of the state. So for example, county passes a new law that says you can't have greenhouses. They also then have to hire somebody to enforce that. Generally speaking, that's law enforcement. Now for code stuff, I get it. That's different, right? But that's what law enforcement exists for. The state's never going to surrender that right. Is the state just going to say we're no longer going to have anyone enforce our laws on people? Well, no. It's kind of a fool's errand, I feel like. They're never going to concede that, ever. Maybe they will. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not saying I'm right about everything. But the way I feel about it, being honest, is that it feels like they'll never concede that. The state will never concede as law enforcement. What? There's no state when they're not enforcing its laws on you. Like, fundamentally, I believe, like literally America was designed. So, like, there's laws that are enforced by the state, and that's basically all they do. They don't run this, like, by federal state, sorry. And then individual states within themselves are managed within themselves, right? Like, the federal government is not supposed to be doing a lot of the stuff it is doing. Really, the federal government's supposed to be kind of policing everything. Like, there should be an executive, like, the branches should police each other. And policing is the wrong word. But you know what I mean? Like, there's supposed to be checks and balances in place to hold things accountable. That's kind of how we built the system, but they're not going to give that up. I don't know. I kind of rambled there, went off topic, but it's just, they're not, I don't see a world in where that's given up, where they just go, man, whatever. We'll let you guys do this now. And that's why I think they encourage you. Like, it feels like the government's encouraging people to go out to the street and protest against something.
Well, I'll definitely say that
they don't think it'll work.
There's definitely been, this has not been handled in a way that makes you think that they're trying to preserve order. It's been handled in a way and almost like guys that are getting ready to bet on a cockfight. You know what I'm saying? Are handling the situation like, ooh, which one am I going to bet on? Is really what that seems to have been the air that I have picked up from a lot of these people. We got a couple of comments here. In 40234 says, I hate the bad apple argument for cops that people make because that is unfair for other jobs like pilots and doctors where they get fired if they make a mistake. Do you agree? There is a very, very high threshold.
Well, I agree both ways, yes.
For that kind of thing, yes. Yeah.
There is also bad apple pilots. Like, I don't, like, if a pilot gets drunk, I think the drinking pilot's a little bit from like a 70s reference, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, if pilots screw it. Dude, there was a pilot in like, I forgot where. I think it was Southeast Asia who literally, unfortunately for everyone else on board the damn plane, committed suicide flying the plane by crashing it.
Yeah.
And like, I agree though. There was a sense that there should be accountability held there. But you want to get to aviation, what accountability has been put on Boeing?
Oh,
Boeing
you mean the manufacturer?
Yeah. Secretly were telling each other they would not let their families fly on the new plane, and what do you know? Multiple of them crashed. But I agree. Accountability is when there's that swift accountability. I agree. I get when everyone dies, you can't hold them account, right? But when there is swift and like real accountability, no one bothers making the bad apple argument because it's just the people that screw up get thrown out. Like, to your point, is there bad apples in a department where everyone that screws up gets fired?
Yeah.
No, because they got fired. They weren't around long enough. So I agree with that, but I just think it goes both ways. Bad apples legitimately exist in every profession. I mean, people will hold their authority as the drive-through clerk over you. Damn right they're going to hold their authority as a law enforcement officer or a pilot or whatever else, as your accountant, as whatever over you. Not everyone, but there will be some. So the bad apples exist. But I do agree. The fact that we have to talk about it is because there's not the accountability. Like, if the bad apples are punished, no one cares because that's life. We call them murderers instead of bad apples, but you could say murderers are the bad apples of the tax-paying populace, right? Like maybe child kidnappers are just the bad apples of the populace, but we punish them so nobody says that you can't trust taxpayers because they're all murderers and child kidnappers. Because it's like, well, we punish them, so we're not. But I agree. Where the kind of weird language comes from is in the lack of accountability. When they're not being punished, all of a sudden we have to start rationalizing in our head, why is this happening?
Yeah.
But that's again though, fine. Seriously, you think that there's people? You think that the chaos going on right now would stop if they held police accountable more? I honestly don't. There would be people peacefully protesting, and some not so, just because I'm not going to lie for everyone. Some people do kind of get animated, right? But largely peacefully for the protest part. They'll go home and have got what they want. But the people who never wanted anything in the first place will just find some other way to destroy stuff. And that's the issue here.
Yeah.
But again, how do you solve that? How do you solve the economy crash because of coronavirus? And the government's been screwing people for 30 years. How do you solve that? How do you solve an entire generation of young people who are just like, welp, I'm wrecked. I got no hope.
Yeah.
Maybe I had hope 2 years ago and then coronavirus crushed all that from me. Now what do I do?
Yeah, and I'm looking at a 5-year depression. Well, actually, I shouldn't say a 5-year depression. I should say that in 2008, a huge problem was you had an entire graduating class that had graduated into an absolutely abysmal economy. And by the time it recovered, I shouldn't say recovered, but got its legs back underneath it enough that people were starting to hire again 18 months later. They weren't hiring the graduating class of 2007 and 2008 and 2009. They were hiring the 2010ers. And so you have this completely overlooked generation who put their heart and soul into college, had accrued debt, had done everything right because they had been told by the entire boomer generation that that's the way to do it and that there will be a job waiting for you once you get done with college. I had friends that had graduated with their Juris Doctorates, Cody, their freaking JDs, who were taking free internships as clerks with judges just so they would have relevant work experience still on their resumes, moonlighting at Starbucks to make the minimum payment on their student loans just to literally be in sheer survival mode with supposedly that Juris Doctorate that's going to make you one of those rich lawyers. Now, JFB has an interesting super chat here. Says ideas on what the quote right end quote thinks of military intervention ? I'm completely against it, but saw a national poll where 50% of Americans support it. Now, when you say military intervention, I think you mean military intervention in the United States of America, according to the 1807 Insurrection Act, not military intervention abroad. You can't. I'm generally against it, but you can't say that you would allow a legitimate insurrection. I don't know if it's fair yet to call this an insurrection. This is just widespread violence and looting and rioting, which is, to me, under the jurisdiction of general law enforcement. However, there are law enforcement agencies that simply do not have the resources to protect themselves, in which case I think it is appropriate, if you trust the leadership of the country, to invoke the Insurrection Act. But that's where the grain of the argument comes back, is do you trust the people that are invoking it? And obviously 50% of the country, according to polls, doesn't trust Donald
there was
Trump.
an earthquake in Southern California.
No, we don't care about any other news, Cody.
People felt it in people felt it in Studio City. It's like 25 miles from here.
Oh, I didn't feel anything.
How did I?
I usually, the rumbling in the seat is just your mojo, Cody. We feel it when you're walking and you're about to walk into the studio.
I just happened to catch that. I was looking, and shout out to local Los Angeles. I believe it's Fox, but local affiliate. Don't hold it against them too much. Alex Michelson. I met him at the Andrew Yang rallies. Don't know anything about Andrew Yang event. Know nothing about the guy. I just thought it was funny because he happened to mention it. So let's go through. Let's give a shout out to Alex. 5.7 based in San Bernardino. Actually, Alex Michelson, I think he pronounced it that weird way. I think he hosts the only statewide political show, and I will say, if you've seen any more than me, you can correct me. For the most part, he seems pretty good. So impromptu plug for Mr. Michelson.
You're a Michelson fan, huh?
No, I met him. I vaguely met him once, and I recognize his face and follow him on Twitter. But until I move out of LA, I'll rep the LA people. He's a local.
Okay. Mario de la Cabada says, quote, Vatican confirms Pope Francis and 2 aides test positive for coronavirus. Get out. Does the Pope have coronavirus?
I guess Vatican City's on the last patch. They haven't got to the America update yet, but we don't care about coronavirus anymore.
Yeah, so are we even doing coronavirus anymore, Cody?
Like I said, they in America they just hotfixed coronavirus. No one even downloaded the patch. It was just gone. You just logged in one day and there wasn't coronavirus anymore. It was really weird. You're like, what? I thought there was a coronavirus event. Did they just end the coronavirus event? I guess.
Yep.
But then there's people playing on the old patch. Like I said, if you noticed, Barack Obama, he had a brief, I don't know if it was brief, I think it might have gone longer, town hall event that he was like live streamed in his office. I'm like, yo, Obama, you're on like, you got bad AIDS. Not literal, you know what I mean? Bad advice that are telling you that you like, dude, coronavirus is over, man. You could have had this town hall in a park with 50,000 people surrounding you. There's no coronavirus anymore. Don't you know that?
So I want to answer this question. JFB, thank you for the super chat. And I'm going to repeat it. He said, what does a right think about military intervention? And to be honest with you, I don't even know what to call the right anymore, to call the left. I think we've adopted purely cultural definitions thereof.
There's the hardcore Trump stands that are like just whatever Trump does. They stand Trump. They stand him. Whatever he does, they're cool.
Yeah.
There's the more critical people on the right who have been more or less calling for the military. They were the people tweeting out, what was it, Basement Donnie or whatever, when Donald Trump was hiding in his basement bunker. Excuse me, dude. Sparkling water wrecks me. Anyway, it's worth noting. I know a lot of people don't. If you don't pay, no offense, and everyone pays attention to every random subgroup. There's a big group of conservatives like that. They're not. Ann Coulter is probably the most famous, but they're not Ann Coulter types. But I'll vividly remember during the height of the immigration crisis, and this is maintained in 2000. Remember when we had an immigration crisis in 2018? Remember the kids in cages? That was a fun patch. Well,
yeah.
They patched that out. Anyway, Ann Coulter had a tweet, and it was in reference to an article about something on the border. And she said, it literally could not have been worse if Hillary was president. I saw a lot of people.
Interesting.
I saw a lot of people tweeting out, conservatives tweeting out, I think Saturday when because like there is nights where there's more protests than looting and rioting. And then there's nights where there's more rioting than protesting, right? Where they kind of vary. During one of the really bad nights, I think it was Saturday, I saw a lot of people on the right basically tweeting out, Hillary Clinton would have never stood for this in her cities. There was a lot of people on the right who thought that Trump was being weak and not deploying it. Again, here's the funny thing, right? If you disagree with that, you probably disagree with people talking about anyway, and you don't have to deal with them, so who cares, right? You can just advocate for what you want. But because I follow, I don't know if you guys see, I follow literally everyone. Like I follow everyone I can. I try to see what I read. I try to see what the headlines are in Jacobin, the literal socialists, and I'll also see what Breitbart's talking about. Just because somewhere in the middle you can find, I don't even want to say the truth, just the most contextualized version of the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, people on the right are critical of Trump for not deploying enough. And then, however, I've seen another part of the right, not the Ann Coulter right, not the Trump stan right, but the kind of weird, like the Kurt Schlichters of the world that were very against the military because they stand the police so goddamn hard. They're like, our boys in blue can handle this. They don't need the military coming in. Well, and it was more of that stance of boys in blue got this. They don't need no help. And so I've seen that. I've seen whatever Trump does is great. People mocking and criticizing Trump, saying he's hiding in his basement and Nancy Pelosi would be stricter than he was. And then I've seen people basically saying that the police are so awesome and amazing, they shouldn't need outside help support. That's what I've seen mostly from the right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm with you in the sense that the right's definitely not a monolith on this like it is.
The left isn't a monolith.
Well, but I mean, there's oftentimes they're in a lot more accordance than
some people who would some people who would describe themselves as firm leftists were shitting on Joe Biden daily because they hate him. Like, you can't say that there isn't these similar, and I agree. Every faction, like the left and the right, have these multiple factions. The stands that just stand what the party does. Whatever they do is great. More middle of the road people that are hypercritical of the party for not getting what they want from them. And then you have people that are just kind of, what's the word? More moderate, not moderate in how you would imagine it, but more along the lines of being like, well, they're kind of outside of like the dichotomy of do you stand or do you hate from the left? And they're kind of in the, like some of the, like people that were like, like worked for the Obama admin, but then also did stuff with more of the people that are just kind of vaguely on the left. I was Kurt Schlichter's a great guy. He's kind of vaguely on the right. He likes being on the right to sell his damn novels. I don't know about anything else, right? Like, those people exist on the left, too. There's the Ann Coulters of the left. There's the fringe groups. Like, the left and the right, the reason why no one's overtaken the other, they're fairly equal and deploy a lot of similar tactics, just in different ways. They're basically the same thing. The right's a little bit more cowardly because the right has a word the left doesn't have. The right has to deal with what's called optics and the left don't. Double-edged sword. When you're worried about optics all the time, you end up coming across as a senator basically on social media. And when optics are not a concern, you're openly calling for deaths on social media. So the thing is, when you're not concerned about optics, it's kind of like giving you that rope to hang yourself. But when you're bound by optics, all you can do is
sterilize your own speech.
Yeah, package everything in the most sterile way possible. And I think it's funny. I think that seems to me, if you want to talk about the right and the left, because you notice I mostly try to say establishment or state because they mostly agree on everything.
Interesting.
They put these phony show bills out that they know won't pass, and they put very inflammatory stuff in those bills so journalists can write articles being like, what? The House didn't pass what bill? And then you'll notice when politicians want to get a bill passed, it's almost always bipartisan. Oh, we're going to increase spying powers of the Patriot Act? I know Bill Barr and the conservatives bitched and moaned for months about FISA abuses, but vote to increase them? Oh, you're damn right.
Oh, well, to renew them, you mean.
But
yes, exactly.
One was to also increase purviews that got passed. They don't... The bills that you hear about... Also, you'll notice this. We don't really hear about these bipartisan bills that pass without issue. We don't hear about them. What's in them? No one knows. They tell you what's in the bills. They know damn well won't pass. They write the bill to not pass, flood it to the journalists, so they tell you all about them, and you're like, what's going on? What's going on in the world? This is crazy. That bill didn't pass. They're doing what now? But then when they actually have bipartisan bills they want to pass, they just get them through.
Huh.
Wasn't it Nancy Pelosi who said we have to pass the bill so we could read it? They don't care. When they've already made the agreement in the chamber that we're going to vote a certain way, I guarantee you most people, because this is the kind of the sad thing about politics, right?
Uh-huh.
Your decision on if you will vote yes or no on a bill has literally nothing to do with what you read in that bill and how you understand it.
Yeah.
It's your voting block, and it's who you have to work with, and it's alliances, and hey, sometimes you got to do... That's how they do this stuff. So when they want to get a bill passed, we find out later. We find out 6 months later it got passed. When they don't want to get a bill passed and they want to rile us up, they bitch and moan about how dare this happen, and then they write a bill they know it's not going to pass. They probably agreed behind the scenes won't pass in the first place, and they have a big performative show about it to rile us up, to get us stupid voters feeling a certain way. But then when the government wants to actually do, when the state wants to do something, when the establishment wants to do something, I mean, there's a famous quote, Nancy Pelosi, sorry, last thing I was saying, famous quote of Nancy Pelosi saying, I don't want to get too far into the other political angle of this, but Nancy Pelosi said that even if the state capitol was entirely on fire, America's aid, and she's like, I won't even call it aid, our alliance with Israel will never end, even if the entire capitol's burning down. That sounds like... Do you know they named a city in Israel after Trump because he's so devout to Israel? I don't want to get to that political end. My point being, there's certain things the government just agrees on. The state just agrees on. They don't bother throwing this stuff in front of us. When was the last time you heard about the government actually just like when was the last time we had any say in the process of funding to foreign countries? They just do this stuff. They tell us later. But when they want to get some phony BS passed, they write all these performative bills, give all these performative press conferences, have all the performative articles come out, and then it's not going to pass. It's just performative. It's to do. It's to justify their job. It's so we don't feel like we're paying them to do nothing. I'm done hating the government. But this is what sucks for me, though.
Well, the original question was, what does the right feel about,
like I said,
about this? And I'd say that the biggest thing, what I've noticed, at least from all of my friends, is I've noticed just a longing and a demand for consistency. Like, okay, cool. We're fine with chilling out on the firearm rhetoric if you will protect us. But if you're not going to, then we want to be able to protect ourselves. And that's actually what I've noticed coming from the right, at least my reasonable and rational friends, is just a demand for a predictable consistency. Like, if this is going to be a jungle, that's fine. I want to be able to walk around with a machete. If you're going to say, no, I got you protected, and you're going to say, don't give me that machete, then fine, protect us. But you can't not protect us and say you're not allowed to have a machete. That is the big frustration that I've been noticing from the right. So we got a couple of super chats here. Bo Watson.
You on?
Yeah, Bo Watson says, have you guys heard of QAnon? MSNBC says it is a cult. Well, MSNBC is full of garbage.
But
don't listen to anything they say.
They're close to the truth on this at this point. No offense. I don't mean to be rude. I hate having to say this to people. I have family members I have to say this to. It's 2020. If you're talking about QAnon, please don't. This is a meme from 2016.
Oh, what? You don't think some of that stuff's true, man?
It's literally a meme. I remember when it started. Alex Jones threatened to expose Q. There was a guy, from what I've heard and what I've gathered, there was somebody working in intelligence agencies back in like 2015, 2016, who was posting on, I believe, 4chan under the trip QAnon. Anon, short for anonymous, which is from 4chan, because that's what everyone's name and default is.
Okay.
He was posting leaks, stuff going on behind the scenes during, I believe, the chaos leading up to the beginning of the Trump administration and shortly after, when everyone was leaking everything and nonsense was hitting the shelves at all the time. And there was someone called QAnon putting stuff out. Now, this LARP got out of control, and now QAnon is, I honestly don't think cult's the craziest way of describing it. It's a bunch of people now that are being led to believe absolutely crazy conspiracy theories. It's conspiracy theories that people on Reddit, 4chan, and like other kind of boards would never talk about in public because they'd be embarrassed, or just being mainstreamed on Facebook under the guise of QAnon right now. And it's really weird. That's my thoughts on QAnon. Cult's not a bad way. It's not super.
I don't think it's a cult.
The thing is, cults need a leader, and
it's another player in the game.
yeah, but cults need a no. Dude, QAnon is it's a LARP. It's a joke. If you believe it, if you believe that stuff, it's so hard for me to say this to people without being like rude, but you're being played, and they think you're stupid if you believe the QAnon stuff in 2020. And I'm not saying it to be rude, but I'm just saying that, like, I do believe at one point there was someone working like in the State Department leaking out some stuff that was being discussed, but that was like 2016 or 17. Maybe 17 is a better year for that. It's not now.
Hey, but wasn't it QAnon that was getting some of the Jeffrey Epstein stuff out there?
Dude, Epstein was a meme in 2014. I remember when the Epstein Island with the pyramids was like getting passed around the internet. Dude, I think we've said this on stream before. There's an unreleased and probably lost episode of Problem Solver Politics the night the Epstein flight logs got released. Before Epstein
That was
became
one of
a
our
big
first
story.
5 videos.
Nah,
Did we ever publish that?
No, I think it's honestly deleted on an old computer, unfortunately.
Dang
But we
it.
recorded a video talking about the Epstein flight log leaks and the fact that like Chris Rock and like Bill Clinton are on there. I use those two names to show that, like, you know, you had politicians and media people. Anyway, that's an old, like I said, people are going to the conspiracy well of 2016, digging up stuff, and then bringing it to 2020 Facebook under Q. That's what I think's happening. But again, cults need a leader. Jared Leto is a cult because he's the leader of it. Cults need a leader. You can't have a cult that's like when people called Yang Gang a cult, I didn't agree, but at least Yang's a leader at it, right? Like if you don't have a person at top with a face you follow, and Q is just the thing. I went way too long on what Q.
Now I'm getting all these ring alerts from your earthquake. You know what I'm saying? All these people are saying earthquake happened.
The second super chat, Silverfang, $2 said, should Yang reignite his campaign now? Odds he'd win. Probably shouldn't now because so much stuff's going on that I don't think Joe Biden is. I think at this point, people are going to, like I said, I think when there's so much instability and chaos, people are going to turn to the establishment. Honestly, all the nonsense. Here's the most ironic thing, by the way. There was no Black Lives Matter until Joe Biden was the vice president of this country. There was no mass movement on the level that Black Lives Matter started on until Joe Biden and then Barack Obama, right? But Barack Obama's not running. Joe Biden was in the White House.
Yeah.
He oversaw the conditions that led to the things that sparked off in Ferguson. He was there when the National Guard was deployed in Ferguson, which is the irony of it all. It's like everything that's happening right now is slightly more online and dramatic version of what happened with Joe Biden and Barack Obama in Baltimore and Ferguson. Again, this is worse in scale, right? But it's like, it's hilarious to think that it's like, well, we'll vote Trump out and vote in Biden. It's like, and just go back to the Ferguson style riots instead of these ones. Like, okay, but I do think there's just some safety and people know Biden.
So JFB super chats, think Klobuchar's chances of VP will ever go back?
No. I think Klobuchar is dead in the water on that one, man.
You think she's DOA, huh?
Unless these demonstrations get to the point where no one even remembers that it started in Minnesota because of like where Klobuchar's connections were prosecuting officers, which she did. And honestly, that might happen. They might roll that patch out. They might just hot fix that this ever started in Minnesota. We'll just forget where it started. So maybe she'll get lucky, but I think no.
So we got some interesting questions here. Trumper for Yang says that QAnon was interesting and had his attention for 3 months in 2018. and it became obvious that it was a LARP. And Brian Hernandez asks, what do you think about Anonymous's leak on Trump and Epstein and Diana murder? What do you think, Cody?
I think that sounds like a LARP as well. I don't think it sounds true. It sounds.
I was about to say it didn't seem. Also, I question whether it was a faked PDF when I first saw it post.
Our media, because there's people in the media who do just hate Trump. There's people in this chat who probably just hate Trump, right? Who will just write bad things about him.
Okay.
The fact that the mainstream media, like the Trump haters in the media, which do exist, and they're on the right and the left, by the way. There's the Max Boots of the world, right? The fact that none of them jumped and have been railing on this story day in and day out tells me that they could tell it's a LARP. It sounds like a LARP story.
That's funny. Now we got two differing opinions here. We got Joshua Vickers saying Trump 2020, Yang 2024. I do agree that right now, if Andrew Yang unsuspended his campaign, I think he would crush it in this scenario. I think so, Cody. You don't think so, but I think so.
Joe Biden is such a big brand, and he's so tied to this country, and so many people know his name. I think at this point, with a lot of chaos in the world, people would prefer Biden, even though he might not have the mental capacity. I just think he's got the name. He's got the brand name.
Okay, so here's a couple of other questions. T-Dot says, if you live in a swing state, please vote Joe. It's what Yang would want you to do. Ugh. I don't know. I'm with Jimmy Dore on this one.
Yang's technically endorsed Joe Biden.
Dude,
I will say
Joe Biden.
Yang's Biden endorsement is one of the least enthusiastic Biden endorsements. Yeah, like look up online. Tell me how many times you can find Andrew Yang making a specific call to action to vote for Joe Biden. It's shockingly low. I was trying to find him. More or less, when Andrew Yang's asked, let me know if I'm wrong about this. I have not seen every Andrew Yang interview because he endorsed Joe Biden. But more or less, when I hear him talk about Joe, it's always more, I think when he was on Joe Biden's podcast to like get out and vote for Joe. But when Yang's talking away from like the establishment, like he's not on Joe Biden's podcast.
Yeah.
It's a lot more of like, well, you know, of course I support Joe. It's important we beat Trump. We need to get Democrat in the White House. It's not a whole lot of, and the Yang gang better go out and vote for him, which I do think is interesting. I might be wrong on this, but I haven't seen Andrew Yang turn to camera, make sure all your Yang anchors go vote for Joe Biden. I haven't seen that promo. I've seen a lot of Yangs like, I endorse Joe Biden. I'll be voting for him.
I think you just give up. You give up all intellectual honesty if you vote for Joe Biden as a person on the left. I just feel like you literally give up all intellectual honesty.
What if you legitimately like him? Are you a demon or do you just like Joe Biden?
No. If you admit and say, oh, well, I like him personality wise, that's fine. But then you can't say that, oh, I'm a liberal person who, endows my government and my civic engagement with all this importance in my life. And no, just admit that you're an emotional voter and you like him. That's fine. I got no problems with that.
But some people don't have some people just like Joe Biden. I can't tell you why. I'll move on to these.
Okay.
Yang Gang Report Live. $5 super chat. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, what up? Yang Gang Report Live.
Watson,
thank you.
$5 said it started in 2016, it being Q. That's what I thought. Yeah, like shortly after Trump got elected. But again, he goes on to mention here that some posting almost every day since Q was talking about Epstein before he died. Our Awakening is banned on Reddit. Dude, I mean, again, I'm not trying to get into this big fight again, but a lot of people have been talking about Epstein for a very long time. I mean,
see, I got to tell you, Cody, I really think
QAnon really worked as a filter from the more fringe areas of the internet, and it's kind of slowly been filtering that more to Twitter and Instagram and Facebook over the last 3 years. Yeah, I would say 17 is good. I do have to admit, the last 4 years are a complete blur in just as fact as how much has happened politically, but yeah.
Yeah. Now we got another super chat here from Michael Alexander. Have y'all seen the Epstein documentary on Netflix? One survivor claimed to have been assaulted by Epstein in Trump's estate. I have not seen it myself yet. Brittany the Shadow has actually seen the whole thing, and she's actually going to start live streaming with us again here. Had a responsibility tonight and she couldn't, but she definitely has some opinions on that, so we will be probably talking about that later.
Well, a Netflix Epstein...
I was about to say, I don't give it a huge amount of credibility.
I'm going to go to my full conspiracy theorist nut bar stand right here.
Okay. If it's gone to a Netflix
might
documentary,
as well say produced by the CIA.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like it might as well just say, like what was it? It was Langley, Virginia? Is Langley FBI or CIA? It might as well just be like produced.
That's the FBI.
Yeah, funded by U.S. intelligence services. Might as well be what it says right there. Because yeah, dude. I mean, Epstein. How about this? When is Netflix going to have the documentary and what happened in Las Vegas in October a few years ago? Ever going to get that answered? October and November. Ever get that answered?
Yeah.
No. That's still, I want to make sure, by the way, I know it's random. Don't forget that. The largest mass shooting in United States history happened less than 3 years ago, and no motive, reason, or anything was given. We were legitimately told by the FBI, nothing to see here, move along.
Yeah.
Largest mass shooting in U.S. history. Nothing to see here, move along. Crazy guy, weird, just one of those things. Guess it just happened. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's again, to get back to, someone was pretty upset at this, but to get back to the idea of the Great Satan, dude, the stuff our intel services do with very little oversight is actually frightening, and they really do it.
Yeah, we had somebody get really angry, said they unsubbed and left because you called America the Great Satan, bro. I think you were speaking hyperbolically.
No, it's true. This is the Great Satan.
Oh, you can't say America's the Great Satan.
It is.
Well, I would say we're the largest force for good the world has ever seen.
Let me say.
That's just your radical perspective.
To who is America not the Great Satan? Maybe Americans. But who else?
Okay.
Who else is America not the Great Satan?
Yeah, but isn't that the point of citizenship, though, is that there are benefits of that citizenship?
I understand rooting for the home team.
The interjection.
I get rooting for the home team, but there's no point in being one of those Yankees fans who's like, yo, why are you hating on the Yankees, dude?
See, I think you're complaining. I think you're complaining.
It's Patriots fans that feel like they're being persecuted and attacked all the time.
Okay.
It's like, no, dude, no one likes you because the bullshit you pull.
Well, I
That's why
don't care.
You're not popular.
I don't care what the weirdos who force their women to wear burqas and.
I'm talking about New England Patriot fans. I get the idea of rooting for the home team. No one's gonna say, yeah, I live in New England, and Tom Brady keeps winning us Super Bowls. Gone now, but you know what I mean. Bill Belichick
I think
keeps winning us Super Bowls, but I understand that we're also cheaters, and we're also liars, and we're also pretty awful. No, you root for the home team. You don't say, yeah, look, I get America's got really big and power and influential, but we do it by pretty much violently crushing anyone who stands up against us. And dude, imagine this.
That is so not true.
Imagine you're some small country in the Middle East, and you get bombs dropped on you by the Americans, and then some State Department person shows up, it's a bunch of nonsense to you, and then you keep getting carpet bombed, you keep getting drone strikes in your country.
Okay, I think what you're talking about is abuse of power and excess military force, which I agree with you on. But that's a far cry. Well, maybe not a far cry, but a different cry than the Great Satan, because the Great Satan is basically a moral argument. And you could say that abuse of power is a moral argument.
From what moral perspective, other than furthering America's interests, do we operate?
As long as America's interests
we fought communism because we
weren't
weren't communists, not because we thought it was that bad.
Yeah.
We fought communists, we weren't communists. If we were communists, we would have fought capitalists because we weren't capitalists. Not because we think capitalism is wrong or right.
See, that seems that analysis right there is a little too postmodern for me. But I got to continue with this super chat, Cody.
But I don't understand what you're saying. Like, America operates from this global good perspective?
No, I would say that America is better than most. Therefore, it could not be the Great Satan.
Could you not argue that perhaps...
Pretty much throw a dart at anything that matters. Could you not argue that
perhaps staying out of other people's business and not murdering people in other countries because you think you know better is perhaps a better moral position?
I'll tell you right now. I am not a huge fan of the military interventions that we've had over the past couple of years. And I would say that, yes, America has gone astray. That makes it a prodigal son, not a great Satan.
Sure,
it's a different chapter in the Bible.
We became the great Satan. We didn't start as it. Dude,
Okay.
I talk about this all the time. Is it? Oh my God, I blank on the name. Is it Operation Backwoods or Northwoods? I don't know why I convinced those two. I think one of them's like chewing tobacco. Might be why I get them confused. I don't chew, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
Dude, in the 70s, speaking of the CIA's favorite assets, Cuban nationals, they were planning on blowing up in a Cuban civilian airliner and blaming it on radical Fidel terrorists, and then they were going to have Cuban nationals shoot Americans in movie theaters and use it as pretext to invade Cuba way back in the far distant past of like the 60s or 70s. So America's always operating.
That is indeed a violation of American values of transparency. See, the problem with America that I have isn't necessarily that it is inherently bad from the beginning, which I believe the terminology the Great Satan would insinuate, and that's why many of the radical Islamic groups use it. I would say that in modernity, it has taken a recent turn towards not living up to its own ideals, and there needs to be a rebirth of Americanism. That this generation holds a responsibility, like Ronald Reagan said.
Someone brought up a point here that said that America has lifted more people out of abject poverty than any other nation, which I agree. I'm not saying that
So you're not saying it's a great Satan.
Maybe I have a different view of Satan than most people. Satan, the devil isn't necessarily like, yeah, the devil will pull people out of poverty, and then he'll use pulling people out of poverty as the lever, to enforce his will on others. Like I said, what's the global good? I don't think one exists. America does. I think that's what makes him evil in that sense. Like foreign policy wise, America is evil. I will say that.
Okay, so
I agree that our economy is working for not everyone, but it's worked better than like feudal systems. It works better than like chattel slavery. I agree. I prefer we have now to a lot of other things. But foreign policy wise, dude, what we do from other countries' perspectives is ridiculous.
Okay, I'm pigeonholing this argument in order to address the super chat. Silverfang says a vote for Biden 2020 is a vote against Yang 2024 ? Now,
Joe Biden has said he was not planning on serving 2 terms.
Yeah, well, I think he's basically insinuated he doesn't think he can serve 2 terms.
He won't make it. It's crazy.
I'll tell you right now, I think Yang has a better chance in 2024 than most people I've seen right now. If he can cultivate this UBI caucus, if Andrew Yang can actually keep working as hard as he was working with the Yang Gang during the primaries, if he could continue that work ethic and actually get a formidable UBI caucus going, it doesn't even have to be that large. It only takes 4% of a population to start a revolution. I believe that if he could get 4% of Congress to be part of a UBI caucus and actually work as a functionally cohesive whole that generally sticks together and has good ideas that actually help their people and cultivate good leadership, just like the Justice Democrats made a splash in Congress, okay, and actually have a spot at the table and influence now, I think he would become a very influential player in Washington, and as long as he does not allow it to corrupt him, he would be in a platform to do a greater campaign than the one we saw for Andrew Yang 2020. What do you think, Cody?
I agree that I mean, it's weird. It's up to Andrew at this point. Does Andrew want to be like a political operator, or does he want to be more of like I don't want to say media influencer, I don't like social media influencer, right? But more of like a cultural figure outside of government. I don't know. I think that's up to him. I honestly do feel like he is kind of weighing that, right? Does he want to be someone who just kind of works as this kind of this kingmaker to bring along his certain candidates, which, by the way, is not new. A lot of people do that. Or does he want to throw his hat back in the ring? I think it's an interesting question about Yang 2024. Regardless of what happens, Biden or Trump winning, Yang 2024 is very fascinating to look at because Yang has said he plans on rerunning, but, a lot's going to change in 2.5 years probably, right?
Okay.
You probably start campaigning 1.5 years out, right? For president?
Nowadays, I swear, you never stop
Maybe 2,
campaigning.
yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, officially,
Yeah.
I'm running. And it is interesting. It's also going to be interesting to see where we are at that point. Also, the fact that Joe Biden says he doesn't plan on a second term also is kind of fascinating because the idea is that his just VP is passed over the reins, and we know it's she. He said it will be a she. Well, she'll take it over from him. But I do wonder, do you think that's something the Americans would just accept? Do you think Americans heading into 2024 would just say, well, we elected Joe Biden and he passed the torch to, I don't think it'll be Amy Klobuchar, but let's say Amy Klobuchar. Do you think Americans in 2024 will be like, well, I guess we just vote for Amy because Biden said she's the one? Or do you think there's a legitimate primary that'll happen on the Democratic side? Again, if he passes over maybe 3 years, not passes away, but if he passes control maybe 3 years in and they have a great last year, who knows, right? But do you see my point? Like,
kind of like a Gerald Ford situation. I
have to admit, I was not alive for the Ford administration, so I wasn't there,
it was brief. I think wasn't it less than a year?
Who's the president who spent his entire term dying of pneumonia?
Oh gosh, I don't know. But it was back in the 1800s.
I think he found out he won and he celebrated running through the streets, and then they say that he caught pneumonia doing that, and then spent his short presidency suffering from pneumonia, and then he passed on. Was that what led to Polk? No.
I don't remember.
I am no expert in American presidents. That's just one of the ones that stands out. Or was it even that he got elected? Was he celebrating because like the Cubs won or something? I don't remember, but something goofy, and he ended up getting sick and dying.
So we got a new member here, Jared Cohn. Welcome to Problem Solver Politics. Thank you for joining. Dude? Also, any of you guys that want to follow Jared's footsteps, please consider joining. It's a very affordable way to help support the channel. You also get these really cool icons next to your name in our chat. So when we're cruising through the chat, it highlights all of the members. And so there's a better chance of getting your voice heard. Hate to say it, but it's the way it is. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, Riley the MB Witch says, welcome, Jared. And Trumper for Yang asks a question. He says, it's okay to be wrong. LOL, it is bullying. If there is a commodity in the country, we were there. Everything from oil to fruit. Yes, fruit. Google it. Rubber, etc. Trumper for Yang, have you lived overseas? Because let me tell you, when you live overseas, a lot of these narratives that you get in a lot of books, such as Las Venas Abiertas, which is the first book that really is famously read by South Americans.
We missed a couple super chats.
Yeah, I was going to go back and actually get those. Also, when you read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, it's a lot more believable until you live in those countries and you realize how it's not necessarily conspiracy as much as incompetence on behalf of others. So do tell, have you lived overseas? And I'm not talking about vacation. I'm saying, have you actually had a domicile and a job overseas? I'd be curious to see what you respond, because I think your perspective changes on those arguments. Not to say everything we've done is correct. We've been idiots plenty of times. But anyway, let's go over a couple of these super chats. Jared Cohn, welcome. Thank you, Nate Johnson.
Hold on. I do push. So just because countries are ran poorly in South America and means our actions are just there?
No, but I'm saying,
if you elect a president and we
that's
don't
not conspiracy as much as...
If people in a foreign country elect a president and America doesn't really like him, we've gotten more tactical or under the radar of this. There was a period of time, God forbid the wrong leader was democratically elected, because about 15 three-letter agencies were about to descend on your country and cause chaos and madness to overthrow your democratically elected governor.
Drake Wheeler,
That'll
welcome.
always happen. Sorry, go back to Super Chats. I forgot.
Welcome, Drake Wheeler. Thank you. And by the way, I would say oftentimes in some scenarios, I would see that as being justified because, for example, during the Soviet Union, if there was a South American country that fell that was generally allied with us, if we didn't get in there, the Soviets would. So it's the protection.
Wait.
And so you have to ask a question. What is that?
To the greater global good. So people living in every other country in the world that was not the Soviet Union and America, it really mattered which major superpower that was simultaneously oppressing everyone else was backing Venezuela. Like, that really mattered to people, and that people in Bulgaria were like, oh my, did Bulgaria exist or were the Soviets oppressing them? Well, they're like, oh, thank God we have Cuba on our side.
Okay.
Or so were they just like, or is that a game played by leaders that just doesn't help anyone?
So we got a couple of super chats that we missed. Jester, the patriotic hacktivist, is 100% against QAnon. Do you know about him? Link in chat.
I don't know that much about him, but yeah,
we'll
agree.
Definitely look it up though.
I feel like Q is a way to repackage old conspiracy theories or something more legitimate.
Well, you have said that you do
happening.
feel that during quarantine, a bunch of boomers have been on social media a lot more because they've been at home a lot more, and that now all of a sudden they're catching up on a lot of these memes and these old conspiracy theories.
During coronavirus, there was a lot of times where the government kept flip-flopping and being wishy-washy, so trust plummeted.
Yeah. So Nate Johnson asks, hypothetically, where do we go from here?
Yeah. Things move so fast, I don't know. There's a future. We're heading into July 4th. Everyone's just barbecuing, and it's like it's July 4th again.
Okay, memorize this phrase,
There's
Nathan.
a future where that happens.
Okay, memorize this phrase, Nathan Johnson. Okay, you got to go back to basics because the basics are good. Okay, that's from a Progressive commercial, but it's good. And also, who's the guy Gaudi, one of my favorite artists?
Are we destroying the machines then? Is that how we get back to basics?
He said
deleting the internet?
Originality is a return to origin. Okay? When in doubt, read the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That is your guide. Okay? That is your guide. So when you say, where do we go from here? Read the Constitution, figure out what you're doing wrong that's unconstitutional, and go back to it. Single best document the world ever created for civil rights.
I got bad news.
What?
The new Americans, younger Americans, modern Americans.
Yeah, that have grown up in a horrible
system. They
system.
don't want to live under the Bill of Rights the way it's written. I hate to say it, but it's true.
The way they perceive it as being written.
No, they do not want freedom of speech. They want greater government. Younger Americans want increased government control over their lives.
Well, no, I reject that.
Okay, cool. Tell you what, you can keep rejecting that and see what happens. But I'm telling you, legitimately, that's why we're seeing what's happening. Young Trump supporters are mad that he doesn't have the military patrolling their streets right now, and I don't want to say young Biden supporters, I guess they exist, are mad that the government's not paying for everyone's health care and distributing funds. Yes, everybody wants to see the government doing more. Better or for worse, dude. Times are changing. Don't get to the last super chat I missed.
Yeah.
From JFB. It says, I think Andrew Yang supports Kamala Harris, given her UBI calls, and Mike Breuer saying he wants Kamala in the debate. Think there is a team up there for VP? I feel like the only thing I would say with Kamala VP, I feel like I would have not heard, but I feel like there'd be more stuff going on because Kamala's a bigger name. She's for president. It does feel a little bit like Kamala's not in the VP sweepstakes right now. She's not in the VP stakes. Better or for worse, I don't think it would be the wisest move, especially now with Kamala, with Cop Kamala, right? I don't know if now is the time to turn to her. I mean, you want to talk about someone turning the justice system on people. Kamala Harris, man, she was good at it. So I don't know if it'd be. Here's the funny thing, right, though? It's like, what, Amy Klobuchar's baggage with how she prosecuted police. Kamala Harris has baggage, how she prosecuted citizens. Like, who do you turn to? I agree. It's tough, but I don't know. I just feel like right now, there doesn't seem to be that energy around the Kamala VP spot, if that makes sense. Like, I can't give you that, aside from the Cop Kamala stuff. That's kind of a meme. I can't give you too much like concrete reasons why I don't think. It's just there's no chatter. There seems to be no fire. There's no smoke about a Kamala VP right now, right?
Yeah.
There's no, is that actually happening? Amy Klobuchar was the last person that happened with, but a lot's changed in 2 weeks, so I don't even know anymore.
So Emerald Miner brings up the point and says, what about the young centrist like me, Cody? I want less government control and love the Bill of Rights.
How does a representative democracy work? It works by there being more people voting for representatives who don't want those, and your voice gets drowned out. Unfortunately, it's just how they work.
Now, Nathan Butcher brings up a really good point. He says, has nobody seen V for Vendetta? Nathan Butcher, V for Vendetta is literally in my top 3, if not possibly some days my favorite movie. And I do have to say, I'm very surprised. As much as Anonymous has taken the Guy Fawkes mask from V for Vendetta and people reference it as a political movie, the fact that V's speech and the plot of V for Vendetta, where authoritarianism government was instituted by a government-created virus and plague meant to stoke fear in order to create curfews. Like, the fact that memes and analogies from V for Vendetta have not run rampant on Twitter really makes me question the cinematic and the political education of the average American. So, Nathan Butcher, I am right there with you. Thank you for joining the channel. Have you ever seen V for Vendetta?
I have. I've read the graphic novel. I'm familiar with V for Vendetta.
Okay.
Wasn't it, God, who actually played V, so to speak? Wasn't it?
It was actually 2 actors. They fired the first one.
Oh, no, the voice, though.
The voice was...
Isn't he
the
Agent Smith? Yeah, I always blank on that guy's name. Fairly good actor. It's unfortunately, when you do a role like Agent Smith, you'll be...
Voila, in view, a humble vaudevillian veteran
God.
cast vicariously as both victim and villain by the vicissitudes of fate.
What's his name again? I know the actor's name. He's Hugo Weaving.
Yeah, it's Hugo Weaving.
Hugo Weaving. I knew he had a cool name.
So Shadow Wolf says, I've never seen V for Vendetta. You are missing out. It's a
right.
Wachowski brothers script. Actually, we can't say Wachowski brothers anymore because now it's the Wachowski sisters.
At the time, it was brothers.
It was the Wachowski brothers.
I think that would be accurate
then.
just for the time.
They wrote The Matrix. And what's interesting is...
Not just The Matrix. I believe they wrote The Matrix, Matrix Revolutions, Matrix Reloaded, and Matrix.
I prefer to mention their good movies. But, no, I'm just kidding. Phenomenal script. But what's so interesting is the original V for Vendetta graphic novel. You know who it was made by?
Isn't that Frank Miller?
It's Frank Miller.
Oh, it was okay.
Yeah. Well, actually, no. Was it Alan Moore or Frank Miller? I'm actually starting to forget.
Somebody drew it. Somebody wrote it, right?
Anyway.
but yeah, I agree.
But it's drastically different than the script. The graphic novel was more about order versus chaos. Yeah, it was Alan Moore. Sorry. It was more of an order versus chaos script and not script, but graphic novel. And V was an agent of chaos while the state was an agent of order. And Alan Moore actually hated the script because he thought that it took the teeth out of V. And the movie is more of a freedom versus authoritarianism argument. So I actually see where both of them are coming from. That's why you got to read both.
I got a question though. Do you think Hollywood actually produces like philosophical films?
Oh, sometimes, yeah, very much so.
Which one?
Oh, Liberty Valance, bro.
Dude, The Man Who Shot
Liberty Valance
came out damn near 100 years ago, man.
Oh, I've seen great philosophical movies.
From Hollywood? I agree.
Look, Marvel Avengers.
I'm by no means a religious man, and Keys to the Kingdom I think is a very fascinating film. It's very interesting ideas in there about faith and like piety and what it means. It's cool, but that was basically 70 years. I mean, it's just that's not popular. People don't like even like no offense, you get these Christopher Nolan films that come out and you watch them, and it's like largely they're not about that much. They're mostly
I think
just
Star
cool.
Wars is philosophical. It asks lots of questions like how far
George Lucas is a philosopher now.
Well, not in his past 7 films. In the first 3.
Nah,
The first 3 had deep philosophical questions. How far will a man go before he betrays his friends? Okay, what is the nature of good and evil? Those are deep questions that were asked. Also, does evil win sometimes? The reason why The Empire Strikes Back was so good is because evil won.
Every movie talks about that. I'm just saying that movies that legitimately like probe like political themes. Like I've seen legitimate like independently made political thriller themes, and yeah, they pull different punches. The writer of the movie, the writer of the source material, probably wouldn't be angry that they. But even then, a lot of stuff like there's a really fascinating point. For example, the writer of The Exorcist and the director of The Exorcist had conflicting views of how the film should be shot and portrayed. I think the guy who wrote The Exorcist actually said that he doesn't like the cut that made theaters was done by William Friedkin because he thinks it seems like evil wins in the end, and he didn't want people to think evil wins. That happens a lot, dude, but it's because, you know what William Friedkin probably said?
Oh.
Shut the hell up. It makes a better movie. I don't care. It's probably what he said. But
Nathan Butcher brings up a good point. Here was a good philosophical movie, WALL-E.
That's actually,
WALL-E.
I think animation might be where that does work. Because, again, WALL-E is very much just probing questions. It's not a movie. Because, dude, I mean, any movie with a villain or a bad guy is about good and evil.
Andrew Yang for Prez says Falling Down was great. Yeah, now there's a philosophical one for you. Which actually,
Douglas.
I certainly, I believe Falling Down was a
actor,
philosophical film.
I mean, I'm just talking about, like, movies that are more about playing with ideas. I don't want to use philosophical as, like, smart or intelligent. Just a movie that's goal is more about playing around with ideas and kind of showing you different perspectives than it's about Batman saving the day. Even though The Dark Knight's got some cool ideas in it, but I don't know. I just feel like it doesn't make sense to try to make a movie that's like thought-provoking and asks a lot of questions and makes $1 billion. Like, pick one, right?
Oh, no.
Do you want to make $1 billion?
No, you could do both.
Why, though? Why would you do both?
The Shining.
So The Shining made what was the box office for The Shining? Was it like were people lining up around the block? I think for Exorcist they were, but I don't think so.
King Kong. King Kong, that is man versus nature.
We are talking literal 100 years, not damn near. Literal 100 years now.
1933, the first one by Mighty Joe Young.
Yeah, well, someone said
Mighty Joe Young of 1938.
Somebody said Waking Life. Was Waking Life what you call like a big budget Hollywood film though? Maybe you could argue something. Speaking of Waking Life, maybe you could say I think A Scanner Darkly was actually like Sony or Paramount, and it starred Keanu Reeves and Robert Downey Jr. on his comeback.
Hey, Ex Machina.
Was Ex Machina more independent? Or I'm saying like
Ex Machina was easily was a $30-40 million film.
I'm not saying modern films aren't made. I'm just saying my larger point is this, dude. Big budget Hollywood films are massive investments. They just want to make money. They don't care about what's in the film. The product must generate revenue. Not even. The product must generate profit. I mean, when the product must generate profit is your goal.
So there's a lot of calls in chat. Both Drake Wheeler, and not Tom Elkins, but somebody else.
Wait,
that I
was
lost
the
in
platform?
Chat, says the platform has to be watched.
I think I've seen the platform. Is that the one with the food? Is that the food and the people and the things? Again,
is that the food and the people and the things?
If you've seen the movie. That's the damn movie. Like, if it's the food and the because the platform, I think it was. It was on Netflix, right? I don't remember the title. I literally just turned it on.
Yeah.
That was an interesting one. It's very much about the idea, which is very interesting. It's very much about the idea that if people only took what they needed, there probably would be more for everyone, but people will always take more than they need. That's kind of the theme of the film. They play around with it. Other stuff happens. It ends kind of on a cliffhanger. But that's what they're trying to show is that and actually at a certain point, the main characters of the film, or the main character of the film, I want to say, kind of starts to take that premise into his own hands without spoiling it too much for you guys. But I have seen it. It is a really interesting film. I'm just saying that if If I'm an investor investing in a project that's going to cost hundreds of millions to hopefully generate billions, I'm not going to care about anything but will it make me money? Can I show it in China? Can I show it in China with minimal edits? That's the questions they have. Not will this make people think?
Yeah.
It's will the Chinese censors approve it, and will the Chinese audience show up to watch it, and can I show it in America in largely the same state? If that's the answer, the movie gets made.
Yeah. So this is my last question here because we're gonna have to wrap up here. We've already gone way over. Our 1 hour live streams always go way over, but that's one of the things I love about live streaming in comparison to radio. You're not completely confined to sound bites and 22-minute segments. Riley the MB Witch says, Gretchen Whitmer for VP. I threw up in my mouth a little bit. I literally just threw up in my mouth a little
You're
bit.
a partisan.
But no, I'm not a partisan.
Why don't
Please.
you like her?
I gave that up 2 weeks ago.
Why don't you like her?
For the exact reason I don't like Sean Hannity. A, it's a personality thing. And B, she's an she's an anti-candidate. I'm sick and tired of people that we're supposed to like because she's good at, hating somebody harder. Okay? I don't like anti-Trump candidates because I want you to be a candidate for a value you espouse, for a program you've thought up and could execute. I don't want you because you're an anything's an alternative. Okay? The mule that's in the pasture across the street is an alternative to Donald Trump, and I'm not voting for the mule. So why should I vote for you? What is the difference between you and the mule? Okay?
Yeah. Hey,
that's why.
I kind of agree. My larger point is I just don't think we're going to see a coronavirus celebrity VP. There was definitely politicians who were able to use the coronavirus pandemic, whatever they call that shit, to elevate their kind of level of popularity and position, right? And she was one of them. I just don't think VP is the spot. Same way I don't think this whole Cuomo I remember we talked about them swapping Cuomo for Biden as president. I don't know about that. I just don't think we're going to see these kind of coronavirus state leader stars rise to VP yet.
Yeah.
Maybe down the line when Gretchen Whitmer has a bunch of badges and feathers in her cap and she's done more, then it's, remember the X, Y, and the Z she'd make. No, I'm not even talking about my personal opinions of the person. I just mean I do think it's a little bit too early. I think it'd be rushing, especially with Biden, especially with the president. Biden needs to make the pitch that my VP is ready to take over day one because Joe Biden has said himself he's going to pick a VP with the understanding they may have to take over day one. That's a Joe Biden quote. I'm not putting words in his mouth. Yeah. He's been saying that. And I do think someone like Gretchen Whitmer, a little bit younger, a little bit less experience, just less savvy with how the media does things and how she's going to be, how being president is, I think would be weird. It is unique, right? Because Joe Biden, when you think about it, Joe Biden was VP for 8 years. He was sitting under Obama, seeing what Obama did. He'd be VP. It would actually be, if there was anyone to learn about what it's like when you're president from, while you're VP in office, Joe Biden might be the guy to pass along his knowledge of being in government for as long as he has, being in the White House for 8 years, and then being president for a few. Maybe, but I still think if he does want to make that ploy, you're going to have a VP. It's why I still think Klobuchar and Kamala even, it's like, are people going to accept them as presidents? They couldn't get any traction in the primary. Yeah. Why would they be accepted as presidents? Like
hashtag not my president.
Well, not even that. People just would be less enthused. They would still say, well, she's the president. I support the party. I support the country. I support Joe Biden, so I support her, yada, yada. They're not going to, all of a sudden turn on her. It's just the voting won't be as enthused, and perhaps someone could primary. It's just, I think that's the better thing. Joe Biden needs a VP that doesn't have to worry about a primary in 2024. And I think you need someone people have more trust in. Again, though, a lot changes in 4 years. Maybe in their role as VP, they make the moves that puts them in a spot where they're free of primary. But I don't know. I still think in my gut, it's going to have to be somebody we probably haven't been hearing a whole lot of fanfare about yet, who's just a little bit more in tune with how things work up in D.C.
Yeah. So anyway, last comment I'll read before we wrap up here is Christian said John Cena for VP.
Oh,
Hustle, loyalty, and respect. I got to tell you, I actually know one of the agents for John Cena who's in charge of getting him jobs. Yeah, I go to church with him. You know what I'm saying?
John Cena is the agent of Mormon?
Yeah, dude. What are you talking? Well, I don't know if it's actually strictly his agent.
You think Cena's Mormon? I can see Cena being Mormon.
By the way, he looks like a Mormon dad.
The Big Show? 7 foot tall, 300 pounds, one of the biggest wrestlers of all time.
Yeah.
He said John Cena is one of the strongest men he's ever been in the ring with.
Really?
So when John Cena picks him up, it's unbelievable how strong he is. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, guys, this has been great. Before we go, please consider joining the channel. Thank you to the 2 new people that joined today. It was great having you. We look forward to chatting with you and all of the above. If you haven't had a chance yet, make sure that you follow us on Twitter. Okay, we do a lot of contacting and talking with people on Twitter. That's where Cody probably posts the most. Make sure you follow us at PSP Radio 1.
I will say full disclosure. I don't think I've tweeted in 5 days. I have to say, guys, my just try it. If you read the news on Twitter every day, try just taking a break largely. I've been following news, obviously, but I've been less on Twitter and social media. It's crazy, man. It's like a breath of fresh air. All of a sudden, you don't feel like you're being forced your perspective into you from 50 people, and you get to just kind of breathe. Yeah. I don't know. I recommend it. It's nice.
So anyway, he took a little vacation, but he'll be back pretty soon. Make sure you just follow us on all the platforms. We love hearing from you guys. Join the channel if you can. It's an inexpensive way to help these videos keep coming your direction. This is Problem Solver Politics. We will see you in the next video.